Alright, finally kitties, we're doing momentum. So with momentum, we're kind of introducing like a sort of a little bit of physics to our game. So what happens is that when you're walking with momentum, you don't, when you let go of the keyboard, you don't immediately come to a stop. You sort of slow down gradually. And I added some things up here on the upper left hand corner. The 4 arrows kind of show you what keyboard arrows I'm pressing, and then the HSPD tells you the horizontal speed and the VSPD tells you the vertical speed. So as you can see, my maximum speed is 2, but when I press the key, it doesn't immediately jump to 2. It works its way up to 2, and then when I let go of the key, it works its way down to 0, and that's kind of what momentum does. So what's cool about this is that now when I jump, like for example, if I'm walking and I jump and then I let go of the keyboard left or right key, he still continues that momentum. He continues jumping forward. Then you can move him around still in midair. But it's not as immediate as the other one. For example, let me show you the old one, which is this one. So as you can see, like when I hit the left and right, I immediately just jump to 2, either positive 2 or negative 2 immediately. There's no build up and there's no slowdown when I let go. And this is actually, it feels pretty good, and I kind of like the way this feels. But when you jump, that's the problem. See how like when I let go of the key, he just kind of stops in midair. He doesn't continue that arch. And so that's what momentum is going to fix for us. Is that we can just let go of the key, and he'll just continue that jump, that momentum. And friction will only be applied when you're walking on a surface. That's a little trickier to jump now with a slide. Oh yeah, and then when you land, you get that little crouch with the slide, like the original RCR. Woo! Yeah. Alright, so let's get started. Okay, so what we had before was you had your little guy, right? And then, when we hit the keyboard, either left or right, you would immediately start running in that direction at full speed, right? So if we hit left or right, you would go to full speed, which in our case we're using 2. So you would go your we call it your HSPD, yeah. So your HSPD would be 2, right? Immediately. And then if you hit left, it was negative 2 immediately. So what we're going to do now is we're going to introduce sort of like a middleman, right? So instead of hitting the right arrow key and then immediately, so like right arrow key immediately changes this, we're going to do that we hit the right arrow key, but we're going to have like a middleman, like a middle variable. We're going to call it acceleration. We're going to have 2, one for horizontal and one for vertical. So what's going to happen is when we hit the right or left arrow, we are going to affect this variable. And then we're going to do things to this. We're going to add other forces like friction and other things. And then once we do that calculation, whatever the result is from that, then that's going to come and be applied to our HSPD. So what we're doing now is we're just creating like a middleman. So let's see, let me draw it like this. Right. So we hit left, right, up, or down. We add a speed to here. And then we also add friction to this thing. And then once we subtract this from this, whatever we get back, that's what's going to come out and go straight into your HSPD. So that's the idea. So open up your character. Actually open up your scripts and go to player input. So as you can see right here where it says HSPD, we have 2. It's hard coded to a 2. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say goodbye to this 2 forever. It served its purpose, did its job well, but now it's time to move on. So let's put 2 to rest, and we're going to replace it with SPD, stands for speed. And I'm going to do that for all 4 of these. For the right, for the left, up, and down. Goodbye 2, you're gone. Close that, come back to your character, go to the create event, and let's create that speed. So let's see, go down here, it's going to be comment movement, because all this stuff is going to have to do with the movement. And we're going to create our variable SPD, and we're going to say, we're going to give it something like a point, I don't know, 4. Let's try 4 and see what happens. Okay, so let's close that. Now if we run it, you're going to see that we're going to move pretty slowly. So let's see, yeah, see, it's like woo, barely moving along like a snail. Alright, let's go back. And next thing we're going to do, step event, movement. And you see how we're resetting HSPD and VSPD to 0 every single frame. We're going to set HSPD and VSPD to our third variable, which we talked about over here. We're going to call one HXL and the other one VXL. So say goodbye to that 0 and then type in H accelerate, horizontal acceleration, and V for vertical acceleration. Close that, come back to create. Down here underneath SPD, let's add the HXL, say that's 0, then the VXL, and we'll say that that is also 0. Then open up your movement scripts again. Oh, actually, wait, let me just show you something really quick. Never mind. Open up your input. So right here where we have HSPD, remember we said we don't want to directly affect HSPD when we hit the right arrow key. So this is no longer going to be HSPD minus equals speed. We're going to pass the speed over to the accelerations, HXL and VXL. So let's do that. Down here, and then get rid of this and replace it with HXL. And then same thing with this one. So grab and put 3 C's. And then down here, VXL also. And finally, boom. Right. Close that. Go to your step event. And alright, watch this. This is gonna be wild. Check it out. So it's like, whoa! It's just flying. Like if you look up here where the SPD is, if I keep hitting the right arrow key, I think it just keeps going all the way up to like infinity. So it's just going really fast. It's really hard to control. And there aren't any like limits to his speed. He just goes flying. And if I go up, whoa! Yeah, that's it. He's gone. He's gone. He's gone. So what we have to do is we have to limit the maximum speed. So let's do that right now. But here I'm going to comment. I'm trying to practice on comment. I'm going to say we're going to limit the max speed, and we're going to use a function called clamp. There's also another one called minimum and maximum, but I'll show you why I want to use clamp instead of those other ones. So we're going to say that H accelerate equals, and then we're going to clamp H accelerate with going to say clamp H accelerate so that it doesn't go less than a variable that we're going to create called maximum speed, and it doesn't go above positive maximum speed. So it's going to clamp that, and then we have to do the same thing for vertical. So clamp that, vertical accelerate cannot go past negative max speed, and it can't go past positive max speed. So that will limit our speed. And then down here, I'm going to comment apply acceleration to HSPD and VSPD. There. Okay, now let's see if it works. And no, it didn't, because we forgot to define max SPD. So let's do that now. Go back to your object, create, and down here again, max SPD. So I kind of like coding in this way, you know, kind of organically, where you sort of write the things as you need them, and not, like, for example, I could have just written all of these down and gone over this entire explanation about what each one does, but I think I'd rather do it the way I'm doing it now, because you see the need for each one, and you get to see when you need each one. So max speed is 2, because that's what we had before. If you remember our movement script, we had here h SPD minus equals 2, so we'll just say for now our max speed will be 2. Okay, now it should work. Okay, so let's see. Go to the right, and now he maintains a maximum speed of -2 and +2. You can see up here. So I added this little interface up here so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing on the keyboard. So you see as I'm tapping left and right. And you see how it's not, when I'm hitting left and right, it's not jumping straight to 2 and -2. It's like working its way up there. So we kind of have acceleration, but you know, and now I can't stop. Once I let go of the keyboard, unless I hit a wall or something, I can't stop. So let's fix that. This is where we introduce another variable called friction. Friction is what's going to stop us. So we're going to say friction, and I was kind of goofing around with some numbers, and I came up with 1.5 seems to work okay. And you guys can change this. So like if you guys are walking on like an icy surface, you can change this to another number. Or if they're walking like on sand, you can change that to another number too. So add that friction. Now we're gonna do this next part. So we've added speed to our HXL. Now we're gonna add friction to it, to the same one, to the HXL. So HXL and VXL. So close this. Go back to the step event, and I was gonna tell you why I use clamp, but I'll save it for the end, maybe, because it's going to take a long time to explain. So go to movement, and we're going to say this. If the absolute value, and I explained what absolute value was in another video. I think it was like the last one or the one before that. So you can go back and see that, the explanation for that. But say the absolute value of VXL, if it's greater than 0, want VXL to plus equals the sign of VXL times negative friction. Why? What does this mean? Alright, explanation time, people. Back over here, see some space down here, this one. So all that is just a shorthand way of saying this. See, this. So it's a shorthand way of saying if the vertical acceleration is positive, then subtract friction. If the vertical acceleration is negative, then add friction. So instead of writing all this out, we're just shorthanding it by writing by writing this. This is a shorthand version. Absolute value and sine. These two are what make this a shorthand version. So I don't have to do all of this. I can just write this. So what that means, what that does is this. So like I said in another video, what absolute value does is that it drops the sign and it just keeps the number. So absolute value, it doesn't care if it's -2 or +2. It just cares about what the number is. So that takes care of having to say if it's greater than, do this, if it's less than, do that. You can just do absolute value and it'll do both. Then next line is VXL plus equals a sine of VXL times negative friction. So what that means, this one, sine, is kind of the opposite of absolute value. So where absolute value doesn't care about what the sign is here, it just cares about the number. It drops this. The sign is the opposite. It doesn't care about what the number is. It only cares about what the sign is. So it'll drop the number and it'll just keep this. It just cares if it's positive or if it's negative. That's all sine cares about. And I mean sine as in S-I-G-N, not S-I-N. That's a different kind of sign. But this kind of sign doesn't care about the number. So that takes care of whether we're moving right, which is positive numbers, and that takes care of if we're moving left, negative numbers. It'll grab this. So that right there takes care of left and right. And then we multiply it by negative friction. So friction, we have it as a positive number. If I go over here, see where we declared it. It's a positive number. It's just positive 15. So if we're moving in a positive direction, right, which means if we're moving to the right, we want to subtract friction. We don't want to add friction, because if you add friction when you're moving to the right, he's just gonna go like super fast, because you're gonna take your normal speed plus your friction, and that's not what we want. We want to subtract friction when you're going to the right. So we multiply it by negative, so that guarantees that whatever direction we're moving in is gonna subtract. It's gonna move in the opposite direction. So for example, if we're moving to the left, which is a negative direction, right, negative, then we're going to multiply times a negative again. And so if you remember your math class, negative times a negative equals, that's right, equals positive, peoples. Negative times negative equals positive. If you haven't learned this yet, you'll learn it in junior high school. But yeah, so this negative takes care of that. So if you're moving -2, you're going to multiply negative friction, which is what, 0.15, I think. So that's going to give you a positive number, and that'll take care of adding friction whether you're moving left or right, and it'll take care of it in just that one line, as opposed to doing it the other way I told you. So that's what this does. So it's like shorthand for left and right. Now we have to do the same thing for horizontal. So I'm just going to cut and paste, and then I'm going to change this V to an H. Same thing down here, and over here. Okay, so let's test it out. Okay, so we're stopping. We're not, when I let go of the key, we're not continuously walking. However, as you can see up here, the HSPD is kind of going crazy. It's like jumping back and forth between negative numbers and positive numbers. So it's never really getting to zero, so it's always constantly moving. You can see my state is just always walking. So we're going to fix that. So what you do is go back to here where we have VXL plus equals the sign of VXL. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, let me erase this real quick and could have done a better job of explaining this stuff, but just make it an episode. So, okay. So what's happening is that our character is he's slowing down to like positive point, I don't know, 1.5, and then on the next frame he's at negative point, I don't know, 0.1, for example. And so our code says it's greater than 0, the absolute value of your horizontal acceleration or your vertical acceleration is greater than 0, then add friction. So what's happening is that friction is getting added. You go this way, and then you get moved back this way, and then you get moved back this way, and then you get moved back this way, and that just keeps going on forever. And it's just like going back and forth because friction is just continuously being added because we're never at 0, like absolute 0. We're always at like 0.001 or 0.02, but never actual just 0. So we need to fix that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if and again absolute value of vertical acceleration is greater than 0, 0, sorry, less than friction, then just set vertical acceleration to 0. So, yeah. Okay. So, and then do the same thing for the horizontal. B's to H's. So what that means is that it's like, okay, well, if you're at like 0.05 or anything below our friction, which we set to 0.15. So if you're at decimal 0.5 or decimal 10, I mean anything below that friction value, then just go ahead and set V or H accelerate to 0. Just set it to 0 if you're below this. So that's there. Let's try it out, and that should stop us in our tracks. Alright, so check it out and see. It works. Because you're no longer, like I said, you're no longer jumping back and forth like positive number, negative number, positive number, negative number. Like now, once you get below the friction level, you just get set to 0 automatically, and that'll stop you wherever you're going. So now you have momentum, people. Wow, look at this. It's amazing. It's amazing. There's still a couple of issues though. Like if I run towards a wall and then I hit the left, you kind of stay stuck to that wall. Like this. See how like I just tap it, he kind of get stuck. So that's a bug that we gotta fix, and we will fix it. But I think we're gonna have to do it in another episode because this episode's already gone on pretty long. I just want to do one more thing before we end it. So right now, when I jump, I'm still, I stop as soon as I let go of the button. So we're gonna fix that right now, so that if you're moving and you jump, even if you let go of the left or right key, you still continue that arch. Right, we're almost done, I promise. So one more thing. Okay, so over here, this is where we apply friction. So I'm gonna comment that here. Apply friction. But we only apply friction if your acceleration is greater than 0 and you're not currently in the air. I think we have our air state set to jump, and which we're gonna change that later, because yeah, I'll show you why. But just add this. So our vertical or horizontal acceleration is greater than 0, and we're not in the air, apply friction. But if we're in the air, either one of these is true, then don't apply friction. So if we're in the air, don't apply friction, only when we land. So check this out. Okay, so now see up there where I have the arrows, show you what I'm pushing. Watch. I'm gonna walk, and then when I'm gonna jump, and then I'm gonna let go of the arrow. See? He still continues that motion even if I'm not pushing the arrow anymore. And the cool thing about this is like I can also like move them in midair, but it's not like immediate. Like when I hit left, when I'm in midair going right and I hit left, he doesn't immediately turn right. It's like this momentum that happens. So that's pretty cool, like that. And then we still have to add the that little crouch. Like when you land, he kind of does this little crouch. So we're gonna add that, and then we're gonna fix these little bugs on the next video. So for right now, this is it, man. So momentum, we have it. Play around with the numbers, play around with like the value of friction, play around with the value of speed, play around with your max values, your max speed values, and like if you still want that quick instant acceleration like we had before this, but you still want him to sort of slow down, and you still want to have that momentum from the jump, just change speed to whatever your max speed is. So in this case it's 2, so we'll set it to 2. And now you see like I instantly just shoot like left and right. You get that instant movement. But then when I jump and I'm not, I can still continue that motion even if I'm not holding down the key. So now you have the best of both worlds. See? Woo! It's fun. This is so much fun. Oh, but look at this. When I punch, it stops at his tracks. Bam. We'll fix that later. See, also, like if you walk and then you throw a punch, kind of, he still has that momentum. When you punch, he doesn't just stop and then punch. Like he slides to a stop and punches. Bam. So, all right, man. We're in that part of the show where I play you a little tune ski, a clip of a tune ski, and the first person to guess what song it is and by whom, you get a shout out in the next video. So here it is. Right, name that song. Until next time.